Rishi, thank you so much for joining us here at SuperReturn.
It's a pleasure.
Great to see you.
Thank you for having us.
We're all back together again. It's been a very challenging period, hasn't it? What would you say this industry has learned? What's its key lessons been during this period?
Well, there are some lessons that will probably endure. Some of those relate to the need for being able to engage with your core stakeholders in person, because Zoom calls are not going to suffice forever. But on the other hand, there is an element of efficiency that has also come into this industry that will also endure, with respect to being able to leverage technological resources in a real-time sense to connect with your portfolio companies, to conduct diligence, to engage on value enhancement initiatives, and to accelerate initiatives like digitization and adoption of sustainability practices, etc., that I personally feel, and I think this is probably universally acknowledged by the industry as well, that are going to stay. And these are all coming out of what we've learned from the pandemic. But as you think about the shape of the industry over the course of the next several decades, the sense that one gets is there is going to be this convergence of two trends, right? One is specialization around certain themes, and the other, ironically, is diversification, because you don't want to be a single trick pony. You want to have the ability to be able to pivot from one compelling opportunity to another compelling opportunity, not in a haphazard sense, but in a very thoughtful, pragmatic manner. So those are competing themes that are somewhat contradictory with each other, but nevertheless are likely to underpin the shape of the private equity industry going forward.
And what do some of those themes and megatrends look like? What would you say are the most significant areas you're interested in at the moment?
So this is a big thing for us, actually, this whole space around megatrends, because the thesis that we have inside of Investcorp is that if you pick the right sectors and the industries and the right companies within those sectors and industries, those two, together with the right management team, a solid bench of leadership talent, if you will, are ample protection and a natural hedge against the other competing force that we are seeing, which is full valuations, very low interest rates that underpin very high multiples, and therefore the risk on the financial side that you could see some dislocation just on the valuation front, right? So because of that big focus on being in the right spaces, we look at trying to narrow down our areas of focus around super secular megatrends that are going to shape the global economies for the next 30 years. And when I say the global economies, that's not homogeneous, right? Different parts of the world respond differently, not just to the after effects of the pandemic, but to economic stimuli and conditions.
You talked about different parts of the world there. Some have shied away from that kind of global view with the pandemic having shut down so much of that. But you don't seem to be doing that. You're talking already about your view and looking to Asia, for example.
Yes, absolutely. And it is, as you think about what the landscape looks like in 2030, 2040, 2050. And we actually run a survey with our LPs and broader stakeholder universe on an annual basis, where we ask them for their views on the most important super secular trends that are likely to shape the landscape over the next 20, 30 years. Not surprisingly, you hear a lot about digitization, the focus on robotics, AI, and so on. You hear a lot of attention being paid to sustainability, climate change in particular, a big focus on the aging population and its impact on retirement savings, on healthcare systems, on specialized care and living and so on. And then, of course, there are the next level down, let's call it numbers 3 to 10, which include trends like urbanization and what that means for multifamily housing and so on and so forth. That is not uniform, right? So when you think about aging demographic and you apply it to India, they're going to roll their eyes and say, what are you talking about? The median population over there is 26. They don't have a challenge with an aging population. Their challenge is creating enough jobs to absorb a population base that is aspiring towards being part of that big middle income group, much as China has done.
So you think that global expertise is still going to be absolutely crucial?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The ability to be able to benefit from prior experience in a relatable market and then apply it into a new market in a business model that is to some extent an extension is invaluable. You cannot replace that with anything. That is really what differentiates us. When we entered the market in India, for instance, about 3 years ago, we quickly realized that we were one of the only very few global firms with a 40-year pedigree to be focusing on the mid-market space in India. That's a huge differentiation, Emma. I mean, there are not, like I said, there are domestic players in India. They are the global majors, but a mid-market focused, truly global platform, we are amongst probably 2 or 3.
So a great opportunity there, and a couple of minutes ago you mentioned climate and that being a very big topic and area of interest going forward. What do you see as this industry's responsibility around that now, and is that something you feel strongly with your 40-year history? You must have seen attitudes towards that change hugely too.
Actually, ironically, I have a pretty strong view around this, because for some time, at least pre-pandemic, there was this view that private equity as an industry is lagging behind the public markets on issues relating to sustainability and sustainable value creation. And the reason why, I said ironically earlier, my perspective is actually it's the other way around, right? Private equity is better positioned than most other forms of capital to drive true change and true sustainable value creation that is there in the long run and meets the expectations of a broader cross-section of stakeholders. And I've actually been pretty public about this. I use the term, let your capital talk for you, right? Let your money talk for you. We are, at the end of the day, we are deploying our investors' capital into companies and real assets and so on. We are in a unique position not just to influence, but to actually make sure that the value that is created as a result of our capital deployment is done in a sustainable manner. Right? And we've adopted a lot of those principles, embedded them into the length and breadth of Investcorp's investment processes, how we think, where to an extent where I think it's now becoming part of our DNA. Right? So if you run into an Investcorp person and say, what does sustainability mean to you? My hope is that that person is going to turn around to you and say, it means 3 things: responsible operations, responsible citizenship, and responsible employment. Right?
So you talked there about this industry is in the best place position to do it. Are they doing it is another matter entirely, isn't it? You've talked about the action you're taking, but are you seeing that across the board?
I think so. Yeah. I think that ship has sailed. And 2 years from now, I think the question that you'll probably be asking is not that one. You'll probably be asking, what can we do next? Because that bit is now getting truly embedded into the psyche of the industry, and the industry appreciates not just the role that it can play, but the role it is required to play, right? As a steward of capital, we are in a very unique position and there is no choice. So I think the industry is lining up to deliver on not just its promise, but its real potential.
Great to hear, Rishi. Great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.